Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to another edition of the Jewish Homesteading Project audio show with your wonderful, lovely host, me. Today I have a very special guest with me. I have Mr. Avi Abramowitz. He's going to tell us about chickens. Basic idea of chickens, why we should have chickens. We're going to talk, have a little bit of a conversation, why chickens are good, why you should consider chickens, why these little funny things that you eat in the form of nuggets actually can be a great companion, a great tool, a great way to experience life and the real living out there. So welcome, Avi, to the show.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure, Avi. Avi, just give us a couple minutes introduction of what you do generally. You live here in what some people would call the country.
Yeah, so I've been up here probably about going on 5 years, maybe 5.5 years, something like that. And yeah, it's great. Been through a couple of jobs up here, and we love it. We're happy we're out of the city, and we hope that, we just continue to expand and one day get our own place. Maybe you'll be involved with that, Monty. But yeah, so I've been raising chickens probably going on about 4 or 5 years now.
And that was the first time you had chickens, about 4 years ago?
Yeah, that's the first time I owned my own. I've always, seen other people do it and stuff like that. But I am by no means an expert, but I can just give you my experience. I've probably read a couple books on it. So it's pretty amazing, actually. I would say if a person were to get into homesteading and to get into an animal, I would personally recommend starting with chickens. That would be my recommendation. Most other animals, they're a little bit more complex. They cost more, they need to be watched a lot more, but I think this would be the number one animal to get into first. So if someone's starting a homestead, this is it.
So I just want to bring up a couple of things about chickens that I think add specific points that make chickens a great animal to start with in your homestead. One is cost.
Yeah.
Chickens aren't expensive to get into. You can go to Tractor Supply and you can buy them.
Yep.
You can order them on the mail from, what was that place you ordered them from?
So there's Murray McMurray, but I personally like Crackle Hatchery better. They have a much better quality. But on average, if let's just say you're going to Tractor Supply, you can get it for $1.99. Now it's a little bit more expensive through the mail, but you can also select more exotic breeds or different breeds, which we can get into. Why are you raising chickens and for what purpose, which is a whole other topic. But yeah.
Yeah, that might have to be in chickens part 2.
Yeah.
But at least in chickens part 1, you could definitely say that for your kashrus issues, if you only want to eat, if you want to raise these to eat, and you only eat certain breeds, that would be something you'd have more choice of with Murray or Crackle.
Right, or something online. Yeah, right. Exactly.
I'd also like to bring up the fact that they don't require a lot of room. How much space do you use on average? Well, let's start with this. How many chickens do you have right now?
Right now, I probably have 60, 70 chickens, probably. Yep.
So that's a good amount of chickens.
I think so. Let me just think. Well, we just shucked it a couple. At least 50, I would say. Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have, for example, we have our older ones that are actually giving us eggs every day. And then we have ones that we incubated in our incubator. And they're probably about 2 weeks old. And then we have another batch that we incubated that's probably about 6 weeks old now.
Wow, so you have 3 generations.
Three generations, and that's how you got to do it. Exactly, and the beautiful thing about it is let's just say you didn't have an incubator. You can, chickens will naturally incubate. Your success rate will not be as high as an incubator, but certainly in spring, they naturally will do that. Now you're obviously going to have a rooster. And roosters are good for a whole lot of other reasons, but do you want to get down into this?
Well, what I really want to just point out is because I know most people know a little bit about chickens who are listening, but I want to point out some of the more things that we would consider very obvious that other people may not. And one is that so you have chickens, you get chickens. Let's just go over basically. Let's say somebody wanted to get chickens.
Okay.
So the first thing they would do is think about what sort of chicken they want to get, go down to the Tractor Supply, they might look at some chickens, and then they're going to say, okay, I've seen these chickens, I like this one, the brown one or whatever, let's say, and what do I need to have chickens? So what does a person need in a chicken?
So I would actually start one step before that. The first thing I would say is, where are you living? There are, for example, certain counties that don't allow you to have chickens.
Right. Right.
So, if you're living in the city, you probably are not going to allow it. Now, there are certain counties or suburbs that might. So you have to find out your local regulation and laws. So that would be the first thing I would do.
Step one, check your local laws and regulations.
Exactly.
Make sure that's something you can do.
100%.
And obviously, you don't want to be putting chickens in an apartment. That's going to
Exactly.
be a big mess. You want to have a space, a backyard,
Exactly.
something you can put them in.
Then the next thing I would do is, why are you having chickens? Are you having chickens just to have eggs? Are you having chickens for meat? Are you having chickens that they call dual purpose? So there are dual purpose birds, for example, that are kind of good at both things. And then there are specific for eggs that are, let's just say, going to give you 300 and something eggs a year. And then there's specific for meat that, for example, they grow a lot faster for meat production. And you just kind of got to ask that question before you go down this road.
I would assume that most of our listeners that are considering getting chickens are going to start with egg chickens.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't involve shechita.
Mm-hmm.
And shechita, not everybody's a sheikhet, not everybody knows somebody who's a sheikhet.
For sure.
So that's sort of the thing.
And then the next thing I would say is, where do you live in terms of temperature? So for example, in breeds, there are certain breeds that are good for cold, and then there are breeds that couldn't handle it. They'd actually die. There's ways to supplement that, obviously, with, let's just say an insulated place. But in general, I think it's probably better to get chickens that are going to be, that match the environment. I think it's very important in general for homesteading as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that the homesteading way is not to have your animals be pets that cost you money.
That's correct.
But they have to be a productive part of your life in your
Yes.
home,
Yes.
where they're costing you the least amount possible while giving you the most back.
Exactly. So if you're living up north, there are certain breeds like Buff Orpington, for example, Rhode Island Reds. They're pretty good for winter, stuff like that. But if you're living down south, you may not want to get some of those breeds. But you can just research all this and kind of figure that out. So that's the other thing, is where do you live? Where's your geography and the temperatures throughout the year? And basically, once you figure that out, I would say that you can, once you order, you want to order your chicks, but before you do that, you want to have obviously a bin, you want to have a heat lamp, you want to have a food and water container, and some some bedding and stuff, and basically order them, and you're ready to go for a good couple weeks before they start to grow.
So pretty much from what I've seen, the way that you guys have been raising these chicks that you just raised, and listeners, you have to realize that when he talks about his chicks, these are chicks that came from his eggs, from his chickens, that he put in his incubator and that he raised up. So these are his own chickens. He didn't buy these. He didn't pay for them.
That's correct.
He got them the natural way, God's way,
That's
of Peru for the chickens.
That's correct.
He got them.
We only bought them once, the first initial time.
Bought them once, buy once, and never again.
That's correct, and that's the goal, is to continue this for really, you don't ever have to buy chickens again. Right. If you buy it once and you have the right materials and the right gear and the right understanding on how it works, you're good. And that's pure self-sufficiency, because basically a chicken lays an egg every day, just about, except in the winter they might go through a period called molting, which is, we can talk about that later, but where they'll stop for a little bit, but ultimately, you can really have eggs, and you can sell eggs, and you can pickle eggs, and you can you can just do so much, and it's protein, and really it doesn't take much.
So I just want to paint a visual picture, because we're an audio show. So basically, once the eggs hatch that you have, or let's say your eggs hatch, or a person buys their chickens and they arrive, the setup that Avi has going is he has sort of like a plastic storage bin, and on that bin there's a heat lamp stuck to it, a clamp heat lamp that plugs into an outlet like any other device, and then he'll have a bedding of something like pine shavings. Yeah,
the only thing about that is just a word of caution. The first 3 days, do not put any shavings, because the chicks will actually eat it and they'll die. They think it's food. So put paper towel down.
Newspaper.
Newspaper, paper towel, first 3-4 days. And you're still going to have the food and water in there, but once they learn what food is, I've even actually honestly seen a week after where these chicks are now eating all the wood shavings, and really that can clog them up and can kill them. Okay. So that's a very important point.
A good week to 2 weeks without that sort of bedding. So initially, when we put our situation down, we have a little water device for them to drink water out of, and we have a little feeder where you can put some feed for them, and they have like a towel or paper or something they're not going to eat on the bottom, and then they have a heat lamp that they'll all sort of cuddle around at night, and they'll whenever they want to sleep, and they'll keep warm that way.
Yep.
So that's our basic necessities for having a chicken, for having chicks.
Yes.
Is the storage place like the bin or the kiddie pool or
Tupperware.
wherever you're going to put
Right.
them in.
Yep.
Then you have your heat source for them, which I know other people use. Some people use ceramic heat lamps. Some people use regular bulbs. Some people use heat pads. But probably the cheapest method is like the clamp light with like a heat bulb in it. Then we have their feeder. Then we have their water container. And then they're basically good to go, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you got to keep an eye on them, especially in the beginning. And just a good indication is, for example, if they're huddling underneath the lamp, that means that they don't have enough heat. And if they're spread out, then generally there's enough heat. But at the same time, if they're huddling all away from the lamp, that means that your lamp is too close. So you got to keep an eye on these things. Some people will put a thermometer. There's actually diagrams online exactly, how many inches based on space do you actually have to lift the lamp as they grow, because they need less heat. Those are in a couple books. I can't remember that off the top of my head.
Well, I'll try to link some books in the comments below or in the video notes, so people can just a couple books about chickens if someone wants to read up on it. Okay, so how long does it take for the chicks to get to the point where you're ready to take them out of your bin and to move them to something more like a chicken coop?
So the truth is, your chicks are going to grow pretty fast. Honestly, if you had a huge area, you can really keep them in there for a long time. But most people, they're doing it indoors, and probably within, 2 weeks to a month, I mean, these things are going to probably start to fly out of the bin. Some people will put, let's say, a screen mesh on top so they can't fly out. But the truth is, you're going to see that they're just going to be growing very fast, and you're going to want to get them out of that small confined space. So I would highly recommend, if you have the space, to get something bigger.
So do you normally keep them inside for how long? Like about a month?
I mean, you can really even do it longer. It really just depends on the person's setup. If you, let's just say, have a basement or a garage and you don't care, I mean, it could be months. It really, really could. And you don't want to cramp them too much. They're going to start to go through, get a lot more feathers, and then they're going to have this like teenage awkward stage for a while where they really don't look that nice. But after that stage, when they start to get their full feathers, you can start to already at that point, if you wanted to, depending on the temperature outside. Also, obviously, these are all factors. Obviously, you got to be.
Depends on your state, your climate. Yeah.
You have to take all these. Every situation is different, but you can probably start to put them outside, in the coop. But the thing is you got to be careful when you put them in the coop. You also have to be careful. Is there other bigger chickens that are already? Other bigger chickens will actually just kill them. You have to learn how to integrate them depending on how big they are to other chickens. So there's a lot of factors to this, as you can see. And also, for example, how to train them to go back in every single day. Because essentially what you want is this, and goes for everything on a homestead, you want things to be working for you. So imagine that your chickens are going in every night at sunset, and you have an electronic door that literally closes on its own, which is actually what me and my friend Baby just installed on our chicken coop. I mean, we literally have to clean it, not, maybe once, maybe twice a month, that's it, even that. We're going in there to collect eggs every couple days. And I mean, right now it's spring, I mean, they're out there, pecking bugs, you gotta give them a little bit of feed, you don't even really have to. And there's water, there's just water outside. I mean, it's not gonna freeze at this point. And I mean, it's just so simple. That's the point I'm making is, when you want to do something, you want it to be a system that really works, and it almost takes no time out of your day. I think that's the most important thing.
Maximum yield, minimum effort.
Yes, and for chickens, you can really get to that point.
And they're such a great beginning thing because they're not expensive. They're not a huge investment.
Yeah.
They don't take a lot of input from you. They don't need attention like a dog or something like that.
The most expense, I would say, once you initially, let's just say, have the chickens and the gear, obviously as they grow bigger, you're going to have to get bigger water, bigger feeder, but you'll have it for the rest of your life. And remember, you're going to have to get a coop. That's a whole other topic on building a coop. But let's just say the most expensive thing is going to be feed. And in reality, it's not that expensive. And the truth is, during the summer, you don't need any feed, technically.
As long as they have enough space.
Exactly. Right. So that's a whole thing. Right. Exactly. So yeah, well, I mean, where we are, I don't even think about that, but you're right. Some people, they might not have that. And then obviously you're going to be having to feed them. But the truth is, if you're innovative, you know, all your kitchen scraps, all the stuff, either you can put in the compost for a garden, you can give it to them. You know, people have done, for example, worm farms, you know, bug farms that you just toss tons of worms or bugs in there. I mean, there's a lot of ideas that you can get creative with, that you can become more self-sustaining and feed also. So.
Yeah, I'd like to point out in some of these particular cases that we know people who have actually gone to yeshivas, gotten leftover food that was going to waste, like let's say, you know, half loaves of bread that dried out from a couple days ago, things like that, and they'll throw that out for the chickens, and the chickens eat that, and they effectively get free feed. They also help out with baltashkas. We all know the Rambam is very much against wasting food, and a lot of these systems today, a lot of the institutions waste a lot of food. And if somebody has food they're throwing out that you knew, like let's say a yeshiva or a kiddush or something, you know, you could help clean out.
Definitely.
You can say, hey, I'll help clean up this place, and I'll just take some of the food scraps with me and do that.
100%. I mean, honestly, you will never be throwing food out again in your house if you have chickens. There's just no reason to. You know, obviously I wouldn't feed my chickens meat and chicken. That would probably be the only thing I wouldn't feed them. But everything else, basically rice, pasta, you know, I mean, really any vegetables, you just throw it in there, and eventually they'll eat it almost, or they'll just go into the compost pile if they won't. And honestly, I mean, it's a system that is self-sustaining, which is really what we're trying to aim for in homesteading.
And so it's also the beauty of the Bria.
Yes.
Hashem made a world where all these things recycle. My mother, for a while when we had chickens, she really enjoyed having the compost pile accessible to the chickens. And instead of feeding the chickens directly, a lot of times just throwing their food on the compost pile.
That's great.
And then when they're going over the compost pile, picking out whatever they want to eat, they'd also see bugs that came to eat the stuff they don't. So that avocado pit or that peel of an orange that the chickens wouldn't look twice at, well, suddenly they see a bug eating that and they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to eat that orange, but I sure as heck will eat that bug.
Yeah, and it's a great system. It's amazing. I think everybody, this is the first place to start when homesteading or just trying to get involved in, you know, doing things a little bit more self-sufficiently. I think this is probably one of the best places to start.
So we've gone over where to buy chickens, how to kind of generally get started with chickens. Obviously, we didn't go into details. This wasn't an instructional video or anything. But I'd just like to touch upon, as a chicken owner, what does a day for you right now look like in managing your chickens? Just give people an idea of if they were to put the time in, if they learn the knowledge, get used to the animals. Like, how is this going to impact their lives? What's a day in a chicken owner like?
So because my system, as I was explaining before, is down to basically the T, meaning I almost don't have to do anything at this point. I mean, the door opens up on its own. It's on a timer or it has a sensor from the sun. So it literally opens up. The chickens come out. We have acres and acres that they can literally roam. There's puddles and there's a pool of water that they can drink from. It's raining, so everything fills back up. You know, it's basically at this point. And literally they're out all day just eating the grubs and the bugs and the grasses. Okay, and then when the sun goes down, they're trained to go back in. The door shuts. There's no foxes coming in there. There's no anything going in there that's going to kill them. And I literally have to go in there. I could go in there and get the fresh eggs every day, but the truth is I don't even have to. It could be every couple of days. It could be once a week. I don't recommend generally once a week, but the truth is the only thing I really have to do is clean their coop, because it's really important to keep, you know, areas up to date with, you know, poop and, you know, fresh hay for them to lay. You don't want bug problems and mite problems, which they could get otherwise. But really, I don't have to give them feed. I do, just because you're giving them nutrients that they may not be able to get on the earth, technically, although they don't have to. I mean, and also for a better egg production, you might want to, but that's also based on the environment also. So Really, I literally have to go in there, clean my coop maybe once, maybe twice a month, and collect my eggs, and it's over.
So really,
it's 5 minutes.
Technically, if you only wanted to see your chickens twice a week, as far as doing any work with them, with your setup, with the opening door for them, that's all you'd have to do. And even a person that, let's say, didn't have a fancy thing like that, they didn't want to lay out for a chicken door, an automatic chicken door, didn't have power to their coop, they're basically getting up in the morning, opening the door for the birds, letting them out, maybe tossing them some feed in the morning when they do that. Then letting all the chickens run out, they peck the feed, you take the eggs if you want that day, you don't have to, but let's say you do take the eggs every day. You bring those back inside, and then at night when you come home, you're closing the door on their
That's it. That is literally it. It takes nothing.
So we're talking about a very low maintenance animal.
Right? The only thing is someone's going to have to be there to close that door. Right. So if you knew, let's just say you want to go home, to a friend for Shabbat or wherever you want to travel out of town, so either you're going to have a friend do it, or I would highly recommend something like a chicken door. Technically though, if it was one day, you can keep them in the coop for the day as long as there's good ventilation and they're not going to be burning up in there in the summer. In the winter, actually, you're going to find that they're actually going to be huddling in the coop a lot more because of how cold it is. So they actually like that, obviously. So it all based, like I said, it's based on geography and temperature and all that stuff.
Okay, so basically there's that we mentioned, and there's just making sure they have clean food, clean water, and clean coop, and that's everything.
Yeah, and that's with all your animals. You want to have everything nice and clean. They're always going to be happier, better production, and it's good for everybody.
How much would you say a egg that you have tastes different than when you buy in the store?
Oh, wow. There is literally no comparison. There is just no comparison. I mean, the yolk is thicker and more yellow. Obviously, there's more chances of it having a blood spot because the ones in the store, they do a process called candling, where they basically will get rid of the ones with blood or stuff like that. Or they're going to genetically make it that they're not going to have as much blood spots. So you're definitely going to have that more, but I mean, the taste is just, it's full, and it's just a full cycle, and there's just no comparison. And the beautiful thing is, and actually, I believe America is one of the only places that don't do this, but if you go to Europe or Israel or most places in the world, if you ever realize if you buy eggs, they're not in the refrigerator, unlike America. And the reason why that is because there's a natural layer on an egg that basically it's a natural preservative that makes it that you don't have to refrigerate it. Once you wash that off, though, you're going to have to put it in the refrigerator. But otherwise, if it's in basic temperatures, 40, 50, 60 degrees, you're talking about you can leave those eggs on the counter for 3 to 6 months without pickling, preserving, or anything. So these are another good benefit of, if you have too much eggs.
So before you wash them, you don't have to put them in the fridge.
That's correct.
Saving some fridge space.
Exactly. Now, if you wash them, like I said, put them in. But yeah, which is great.
Do you feel better eating eggs from chickens that you see walk around as a person than you do eating the ones that you know came from like a factory farm?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have to think reasonably what the nutrients is that you're getting with a chicken egg in the store. There's probably going to be it's just nothing compared to what you're going to have.
Or is it the biodiversity they eat from, you're saying?
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And it's more than that. I mean, you're living with your chickens. You have a relationship with them. You care about them. There are people that literally have chickens as pets. They'll actually like come up on their knees and they're, and they know who the person is. They can get to that level if you really wanted to. But in terms of, your homestead, in terms of getting rid of bugs and ticks, in terms of, just helping the grass and fertilization, if you have kids, kids love chickens. They love animals. It's just so important for them to get their hands dirty. And I think this is, like I said, this is probably the number one animal to start out with in so many ways. Yeah.
So how many blood spots would you say you get per dozen on average? Would you say 2 or 3 eggs per dozen?
That's a really, really hard question because there is a lot of misinformation out there on blood spots. Number one is it does depend on the breed. There are certain breeds that do naturally have more blood spots than others. I would say number 2 is blood spots generally come from the stress of the bird. So if your birds are stressed, you're going to start seeing that a lot more. Also, it could be something in the intestines or the internals of them that if they're a little bit wrong, they'll start to have more blood spots. Hens that are sitting on eggs and what we call that is when the hen goes broody. Now, basically, if it's fertilized, the hen will want to go on these eggs for about 21 days, and That's a natural process, and it's called going broody. And basically, within 21 days, you're now going to have chicks. So once a hen starts to go broody and is sitting on those eggs for a couple days, all those will have blood spots.
Right.
Because basically the fertilization from the egg is already, it's
The
starting
natural
to create
process
an
is
embryo,
starting.
an
The
embryo.
chicken's starting to grow.
Yeah, it's starting to actually grow. So it only takes a couple days, and then all those underneath her are going to have blood spots. So
Okay,
you got it. So once it's springtime, you got to be very careful to, I would say, go in the coop a lot more often, meaning every day, because otherwise they're going to naturally want to go broody.
Right. Okay. So
yeah.
good thing to point out. If you have your eggs in the spring, summer, make sure you get in there. Make sure you get your eggs out every morning,
Yeah.
as opposed to waiting around, because you'll have a lot less blood spots. Like that.
Exactly. Now, other than that, there's definitely going to be blood spots. Like I said, it's all these factors together. You got to expect it. And obviously, if we want to talk more religiously and halakhically, there's definitely different opinions out there on how the rabbis look at blood spots. So some rabbis will, for example, say if it's in the inside of the yolk or if it's on the outside, where it's a different halachic status. What color is it? Is it red? Is it more brown? So I'm not really qualified to go into that, but people should certainly be aware of, consult your rabbi on this, and not everything that you see that's brown or red is necessarily considered a blood spot. Very important point.
So tzarech Ian on the blood spots, you definitely want to look into it.
Yes.
I just want to clear up a little a myth that I heard and bring out this question. Can you have blood spots in chickens without roosters?
Absolutely. Like I said before, you can have, if the chickens are stressed, has nothing to do with the rooster, you can have a blood spot. If the chicken has a problem with its internals, you can have a blood spot. So it has nothing to do with the rooster. Now, like I said, the only time a rooster is going to cause a blood spot is if the hen goes broody and is on there for a couple days, all those eggs will have blood spots.
So the only thing you save by not having a rooster, as far as blood spots are concerned, is during the raising chicken, the mating season for the chickens, when they're raising their young.
Yep.
You're gonna not have to collect your eggs every single day.
Yes.
So
exactly.
that's about everything you're saving.
That's it. Yeah, you can still have blood spots without a rooster. And in my opinion, roosters are beneficial in numerous ways. That's at the same time they also have their quirks and problems. But if a person has the space for it, I would highly recommend a rooster. Obviously, if you're living in a city or a suburb, you're going to be waking up neighbors, and obviously that's going to be your first problem. But it has some other problems with it. For example, they could get a little bit aggressive depending on the breed. Some breeds are more or less, roosters will naturally fight one another. That's a natural response depending on how many you have. And roosters can only take care of so many chickens. So if you have 30 chickens and one rooster, well, then all those eggs are not going to be fertilized. So you have there's a formula out there that you can get how many roosters per hens. But they do protect the flock. They do alarm. They keep healthy packs, and I think they're great benefits. And obviously, halachically, according to some, you can't even say the bracha in the morning of Asher Nasam Nasagli Left Melola unless you actually hear the rooster. So there's certainly that.
So if you really
Yeah,
want
that
to
extra
say all
bracha.
day, so you
That's
should
correct.
grab a couple roosters.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Awesome. We just had Pesach. Tell us what you fed your chickens over Pesach that wasn't chametz. A lot of people are buying feed from like Tractor Supply.
Yeah.
They're getting it from pet stores, maybe even Rahman al-Islam.
Yeah.
But what's a good Pesach food? What are something they could eat on Pesach?
So you can always go to the store obviously and get the obvious, which is corn. Even you're allowed to buy gebraks, even to the strict opinion of people who don't eat it. You can certainly. Oh, I'm sorry, not gebraks,
kidneys, yeah,
kidneys. I
kidneys.
apologize. Yes, it's kidneys. So you can definitely give them corn, and if you go to the store, they'll have corn. But if let's just say you did not want to do that, first of all, you have all your leftovers throughout the meals throughout Pesach. That's number one, which I'm sure you're going to have. Second of all, you can certainly give them matzah, and already God has made nature work with
The timing of Pesach.
the timing.
Chag HaAviv.
Exactly. It's the springtime, exactly. And guess what happens? What comes out in the spring? All the sprouts are coming out, all the bugs. So in reality, if you gave them no feed, they're going to survive. And if you're really concerned, give them leftovers or a little bit of matzah or something like that, and you'll be fine. Yeah.
I would also point out that for our listeners who are brave enough to dumpster dive, if you want to dumpster dive the farmer's market and pick up some of the, maybe some of the peaches or the fruits or the vegetables that are a little kind of going off. Chickens love watermelon. They love a lot of these different fruits and vegetables that they'll eat. And
Oh, yeah.
like we said, if you have a compost area, you can always put in there, and whatever they don't eat, something that they will eat will come to eat that. Probably.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Avi, for coming in. We'll definitely
my
have to have you
pleasure.
back
My
for more in-depth things, maybe a couple of videos about how demonstrating one day when you're raising one of your groups, one of your batches of chicks, to show people the setup and how maybe they could do something at home.
Definitely.
Guys, if you have any comments, questions for me, for Avi, you want to know more about chickens, please leave a comment, leave something, and we'll make a discussion about it. We'll come up with more ideas.
Yeah.
And if you have ideas for our next show on chickens, you can drop that too. Thanks so much. Please tune in to the Jewish Homesteading Project for all your Jewish homesteading needs.